Hi, Zizaran here with another Path of Exile University lesson. This time we are going to be covering how to path of building. So this is Path of Building 101. I'll move over here. And yeah, it's going to be a hopefully short lesson. But Path of Building is a very strong third party program that is basically like a character editor or for like practicing and like understanding how to build characters. You can basically like customize and look at everything. I'll teach you guys how to use the program properly. Um, let's see. So yeah, we're gonna cover things like privacy settings, importing, looking at passive trees, gear sets, importing items, and there's some like really good features. So, what is path of building? Well, first of all, it looks like this. And sometimes a lot of players will struggle with this because a lot of people just look up path of building and download the normal one. However, most, and you can see down here, most people are now using something called the path of building community fork. I should update. But the reason for this is that the guy who was initially making path of building got hired by Grinding Your Games. He's no longer keeping it very up to date. But there are like the community has sort of taken over. So I'll have like the download instructions down below on how to like get the fork. And it's very easy to install now. So that is something that basically if you're not using the fork and you're using the normal one, you'll get an error when trying to import the builds. So make sure you are using the fork. I can't think of any, there's no reason to use the normal one anymore. But yeah, it is a very strong program. So here, that is the community fork, and it's very straightforward to download it. Now, first, one of the most important things to like use path of building is that you open the website and it'll say like your account name, etc. Then you go to edit privacy settings and you make sure that the hide character tab is not selected. That's very important because if not, your profile will be hidden even for, well, you know, it's not like you're logging in with path of building. It's completely like it doesn't matter if you're looking at your own character or somebody else's, right? There's no login process. So you need to make sure that it's not hidden. So yeah, set private profile and hide characters needs to be off, and that's very important. So let's look at a little bit about what we can do in path of building, and we're gonna just start covering everything. So a really strong thing about path of building is you can import anyone's profile. Like you don't need to like I said, I feel like a lot of people think they're logged in or something to path of building and it's mostly just for their own, and that you need to get linked somebody else's path of building code to use it. Whereas that's not the case. Right now I can search for Zizaran and I'll get all of my profiles like normal. However, I can just look up like, I know Rise QT is playing a build that I'm really curious about. Let me look at his characters. And then that is in the import section here in the top left. And you can see I can also choose leagues because sometimes streamers will have a lot of characters. So he's playing Soul Self on Hardcore Heist right now. Now I only have 3 characters to look through. And if I know that it's a dead character, then I'd have to look through the entire list. And this is like very good because some fucking streamers don't delete their characters. And then you get this and you're like, I don't remember what it was called. Why do you do this? Now, the reason why I do this is because I know a lot of people follow my old characters. So I don't delete them. But you can just type in anyone's name here. You can also like look on PoE Ninja and look up someone's account name. And then you can import and look through. Look at this level 100 character. And then you can import the passive tree skills and the item and skills as well. Just want to make sure I'm like covering everything. But yeah, when you get someone's build guide, let me just open one of my build guides from Path of Building here. Let's see, what was the most... Zizaran. Cracklands was for this league, right? 3 months ago. It was not a particularly great build, but should be next league, hopefully, because they've said they're buffing it. So now, the way it works with my build guides is I'll see here that there's like the guide, I look like a demon, and there's a POB fork here. No, wait, that's the actual, no, that is the actual thing we need. So there's the pastebin link here. Pastebin has been struggling lately, so sometimes there will be like a really, really long thing that we'll have to do differently. But either way, you just copy paste that, and then we go into path of building, and hopefully this hasn't like expired or crashed. No, code is valid, and then we just click on import, and then it gives you everything here. And for my builds in particular, not every build guide will do this, but we do it very, very step by step. So if you're new to my build guides, we like show you like what gems you're using and what step of the way. And we also do something we call like skill groups. So for example, A means that freezing pulse here is being replaced by frost bomb, which is being replaced by orb of storms. So it's to try to make it easier for the player that you don't have like 17 gems you aren't using. We try to have like different gear sets for early game and end game, and we also have notes for new players with a lot of extra information, tips at the bottom. And this early thing is actually inspired by a streamer called Lyric, who said he wished guides would tell you new players where you can buy gems and what gems can't be bought on certain characters. And then we also do like a step-by-step in the skill tree leveling. Just something I came up with just to make it easier for new players, because something that's very common with a build guide is, here you go, here's the build guide, and then a new player's like, well, like, do I go here first? Do I go here first? What do I do? So, that is like where our guides stand apart from others. Not every guide will do that, but I think it's very important to do it step by step by players, for players. Let's see. We'll go through all the we'll go through all the configs and stuff like that. And like if you yourself want to share something, like maybe you've like edited a friend's skill tree or something, the way you would do that is you click on generate, share with pastebin, and then copy. Now sometimes pastebin will have issues with path of building, and you might have to find some sort of other service to upload the wall of text. And let's see, if I just click on generate and copy, I can show you how long that is. So it's not something you can always like send on Discord or something, or like it's a very, very long one, but sometimes it won't work and you'll just have to copy that. Sometimes you will have to copy that. But that's how you do that. Now let's show a little bit about the item features. So first off, you can craft items. There are some like pre-made items down here to make it easier. So, you know, just like if I search for titanium, it will show a titanium spirit shield, and this is like a default caster shield with just life and stuff as the base stats. There are quite a lot of items that aren't there, and then you'd have to click here on craft item, and you would go, for example, well, I want a different shield. Then you scroll down to energy shield, and then you look through the list and see what you want. So for example, the second highest energy shield is harmonic, and then Val. So you go, for example, okay, well, I didn't manage to get the best one. This is what I have. Then you can look through the list. You have your normal, this is the normal prefixes and suffixes without any influence. And then, well, you know, I happen to have a shaper one. Then it'll add the shaper suffixes here. So for example, I can do recover mana on block. There will be like other special modifiers. Maybe I want to simulate the crafting bench one. And then you have all those here. You have essences you can add here. And you could just custom add them either by clicking that or by clicking edit. Here, like, it's very, very important that you write it exactly as it would be in-game. Because if you do a typo, hey, I am not a stat, then it'll just show up red. And anything red it just means that it is not calculated by path of building. Whereas if I write exactly, it recovers 17% of your maximum mana when you block. Seeing as this is like exactly the same context, it'll show blue. So you can do like, for example, wait, what's the actual context? Plus 140, so plus 1000 to maximum. There, that should work, right? A really, really useful feature of this for more advanced users, or if you're able to figure it out, and sometimes you will see guides do this too, but there are some times that like some auras and a few other things, like some like more clunky mechanics will be like red. An example of this, I think Void Forge does this. I'm pretty sure. Maybe it's not Void Forge, but there are some mechanics where maybe like some unique elements would be red. I actually do think maybe this is like newly updated, but as an example, Void Forge didn't calculate the 300% weapon fizz as extra elemental. What we would do instead then, as a approximation, would be, for example, gain 100% of weapon physical damage as extra fire damage. And you have to... Basically, we would add stuff like that. Sometimes you'll see guides have maybe an insane flask or an insane jewel, and that's generally to simulate something that Path of Building doesn't manually calculate. But at least I think this is fairly new that actually works. So if you see like a flask that gives like a 10 million damage, it's probably simulations for something that isn't working. Malachi's Artifice, for example, you can see here that it's red, right? So if I really, for whatever reason, it's not important, but if I want to simulate that I have a red socket on, I could do plus 100 fire resistance. This should work instead, right? For 88. So that are some things you can do with items there. Now, this hopefully will be slightly a bit of a mind-blowing thing for new players, and I think it's a really, really cool feature. But Path of Exile has a really, really amazing in-game import feature. Let me log on a character with items. This is actually a really, really cool thing that Grinding Gear Games just has in their game. This is no like third-party thing or a mod. But if I hover over an item now and click Control-C, this is now on my cursor. So I could either like, I could be obnoxious and put this in Twitch chat, which will just be really, really annoying, and every streamer will hate you for it. People do this all the time. It'll be like, is this item good, streamer? And then you'll get timed out and people will hate you. And you can see here that it parses it very nicely in Notepad. But the really, really good thing about that is you can Control-V it here into Path of Building and it will automatically save it. You don't actually need to click on Create Custom and then Control-V and click Create. You can actually just Control-V here. So this is a really, really good feature that is very, very useful. And it's fine. I'm not reading chat much right now, so you don't need to time people out. It's all good. Let people have fun for now. It's mostly when I'm reading chat it matters. So yeah. That is a really, really good feature. I don't know, they're doing what they're supposed to do. It's all good. It's all good. This is they hate me now. So very, very good feature. Very, very good feature. And you can also have this works from pathofexile.com/trade as well. Let's see if I can show that. It's supposed to work at least. Does not work from PoE trade. I'm pretty sure if somebody links an item, it works. Can't remember if it works on linked items. Let me just search for something. Actually, I'm just gonna any weapon. Right. So I've searched for any weapon now. If you see here, in the bottom left of Path of Building, another really, really good feature. This doesn't work on PoE Trade, but here there's like a copy item button. So I can click here on the Replica Paradoxica and then just paste it into my Path of Building. Then I go like, oh, it turns out that this ring actually doesn't have enough resists. it doesn't actually have enough resists. So very, very useful copy item features here. Let's see. Well, I'll do configurations last. Let's look at the skill tree. There's a lot of useful things here. So, this is another thing that happens a lot at League Starts. Sometimes Path of Exile will introduce new gems into the game. We have the water orb, whatever it's called. Hydro orb? Can't remember. Hydro Homie. We have Hydro Homie being added to the game. It looks like a really cool orb, and I will hopefully be making a League Starter for it. However, seeing as we always get released the information, like the data we need, very late, Path of Building might not have this. So, for example, when Cracklands was released to the game, you can see here that I have Arc, which was very similar to Cracklands. Turns out it was just better. Here in the build, as a placeholder, and then I'll try to make it clear in my guides. But, more importantly, it's a very, very cool thing that you can actually select this as your main skill. It'll start like simulating the damage, but there is another thing that is really, really good as well. It will give you, for example, a power per point. Let's see. One sec. Sorry, I wanted to show node power. So what this does, and you can see it's like starting to populate, is it will start filling in what is the most damage and defense for your build. And that is very, very cool. And then if I click on power per point, it will include that they should be nearby. So showing top node, what this will do is it will give you big anointment suggestions. So when I have show node power and show top node, it will have the red one. This is going to be a good suggestion for what would give me the most damage. Now, I will cover configurations in a sec as well, but this will change based on what your configurations have. Because let's say that I have frenzy charges already. I was hoping that would happen. Now that I already have frenzy charges, it'll be another top node, because it was say that I'm getting frenzy charges from Blood Rage. Well, then I don't need to get frenzy charges from Disciple of the Slaughter. So now that I've like just enabled frenzy charges, it will say that mental rapidity is a better cast node or a better node for me. This won't always be correct. This will strictly follow what is going to give me the highest damage per second. So it won't always be the best, but when you're looking without power per point or show node top, it will just like fill them in, and it'll be like a stronger red depending on how good they are. So it'll also show, you can see to the right of the name here, it'll show kinetic impacts, and then we have Amber, Azure, and Violet. This isn't a particularly good node, obviously, for this build, but it'll like, you'll look through some of them, it'll show like the different DPS. So this one is 68,000 total DPS for my build. This one is 42,000, etc. And sometimes there can be some nodes that are really, really far away, and anointing them might be really good. What happens when you click power per point, and that will start then, you can see that everything down here, it might be like slightly red, but it's not particularly worth taking because it's so far away, and it'll try to show you that the nodes that are very close to you is what's important, right? And then if I hover over this, it'll go like allocating this node and all the nodes leading it will give you 12,000. So it'll like give you like that. I think this is new. Right. That's new. I'll look at that later. Next semester. Maybe I'll just look at it now. Wait. Select a specific stat from the drop-down. Total DPS. Oh, cool. So it'll just like, it'll just show. Oh, and that includes clusters. Oh, that's a very cool feature. So this, wow, that's actually really, really cool. This is a new thing that I didn't even know about. And this, you can include cluster jewels, and it'll show you what is like the most total DPS increase. And then we see Unholy Grace was like really good and not a cluster. Where's Unholy Grace? That's pretty cool. When was that added? That's like very new. Wait, was Unholy Grace a cluster? Oh, I think it was. Okay, mental rapidity, and that's the one here. And then when you search for it, it'll make a red circle around it. So it should be pretty easy to find. But that's really, really cool. I haven't used that before. But yeah, the node power is very useful, especially when trying to find annoyance. And it also is like a good way for learning what stats are good for your build. Because something that'll often happen is that maybe you have 2 items and you're new to the game and you don't know whether the unique you found is good or the rare you found is good, and you don't know which one to use. So you can just copy paste both of them in and then switch between both. And then I'm like, okay, this Void Scepter is 511,000 damage and this Void Scepter is 530, so this is better. It isn't always that everything is accurate in path of building, but it is the best we've got. It is the best we've got. Now, it is important that you try to set everything up properly, because if your calculations aren't correct, then yeah, it's important to be as correct as you can. And speaking of, let's see, I think that's what we cover next, right? Yeah, we'll do configurations. Right. So in configurations, you want to be as accurate as possible. If you've ever been going to the Path of Exile build forum, sometimes you will see this. Sometimes you'll see this, and you're like, so this is my really good starter build. It's only 5 Chaos Orbs, and it does 13 billion damage. Trust me, bro. And that happens a large amount. That happens a large amount. So make sure you like, and well, sometimes they'll be heavily criticized, but on the Path of Exile forums, if you post anything negative, you can just ask the Credigy Games to remove it, and they will. Something to do with New Zealand bullying laws or something. I can't remember exactly the reason. But more importantly, that happens a lot, so make sure there are good pathofexile.com forum guides. There definitely is. But as a new player, it is very, very hard to tell. Most streamers would get very, very quickly ridiculed for having a bad build. So most streamers do honestly have solid builds. Might be a bit cocky, but I would say by far I have the best build guides and the best system. So they are very, very strong and easy to follow for new players. Number one thing we want to improve is like making it more clear how to scale the build guides a little bit for new players and making that easier to understand. But we work pretty hard on that every league start, and we have like 5 people working on that. So it should be very, very strong builds for new players. So, but the main drawback of our builds is we don't have text-based guides. Anyway, so let's talk a little bit about the configurations. So here you want to look through and also be very, very like honest with what the build has. Like for example, you might have power charges, but they might only be while you're clearing the map, right? You might not be able to generate them on bosses. And if you are trying to figure out what your boss damage is, then you can't in good faith click that, right? But let's say that I am generate frenzy charges. I do have onslaught even on bosses. And maybe you do only want to check, like, maybe you have an onslaught flask. In which case you could just tick it here in the flask config. So you can go through here and like, let's click everything. Let's like click some reasonable ones. Let's see. I'm using Wave of Conviction. Wave of Conviction isn't lightning exposure, and that is up. My crit chance is lucky. That would also be toggled by clicking the flask if I'm using a diamond flask. And then the enemy is shocked. And then, for example, Skitterbots is like 18%, I believe. Shock here is something like people overestimate a lot. I would always try to be like undervaluing this stat and then having more damage, because if you're very, very if you hold back a bit with your path of building, then it's better to have more damage than less damage than what you're expecting. So I try to be very, very careful and having a low POB, and then have the build outperform that. But yeah, maybe they're chilled and they're shocked. From Skitter Bots, for example, maybe I've used Blade Blast to unnerve it. And then I gotta figure out, like you can see here, it gives you some info. So for example, a standard boss gives you 40 LE rest, 25 chaos, and then Shaper, Guardians, and Cyrus has more. And you don't always need to check your Cyrus DPS. Some builds are very, very affected by this. And here is a good idea to show. For example, if we click here on the skills and then look at my well, now we could have done Cracklands, but let's see here. Here it says that Spell Echo is the best one, and then Lightning Penetration, for example. But we'll see that Lightning Penetration will move down quite a lot now that we removed it. Now Hypothermia is better than Lightning Penetration, and that's because getting the resist like that much negative doesn't matter as much. It's more about like removing the positive resists. So if you are fighting something that has like 50 elemental rest, it becomes a lot more to have more lightning pen, and you'll very much notice that like boss damage and stuff can go up. And pretty much every build can use hypothermia if you have Skitter Bots, because that chills your enemies. If I don't have enemies killed, if I don't have enemies chilled ticked here, you can see the hypothermia doesn't even show up. It doesn't even show up as doing more. Well, I mean, it does actually do a little bit more damage, but either way, like, it is important to have that ticked here, and you'll see that that is the main damage. Oh, it's only increasing the damage because of Archmage. That's it. So configurations are very, very important. If you add something like, for example, Inspiration or Arcane Surge, you have to make sure that you toggle that. Now I have to find that. They always move this. Do we have Inspiration charges? So you can see that Inspiration didn't do anything until that. So make sure you you know that has to be on. Because now, yeah, now you can see that Inspiration shows. Still not that good, but sometimes things can have different benefits as well, because even though like cast speed might not always be the best thing, sometimes after cast speed is the best example, because it might not always be like the best path of building stat, but it can be a lot of quality of life in making it feel better. Innervate as well is another example of something that you have to like toggle on, and then configuration innervation is active, and then that should be here. It's even worse, but yeah. There. So that is like some about the POBs. Exposure type, everything. Elemental weakness and stuff should be, let's see, do we have let's see, conductivity. I think I already have that. I do already have a curse somewhere. I just need to find it. Let's see. It's not in the in-game setup then. Curse Wave of Conviction. So, that means I have it in multiple spots. Or is it just that one? No. I'm just gonna try to find that real quick so we can show. There. Right, because early on I self-curse. So, here, when you toggle on the conductivity, this, whenever conductivity is in the socket creeps, it will always like count it as being on. It will always count it as being on. So, if it's not always on, then, you know, you might be overestimating your damage a little bit there. Let's see. But yeah, there's loads of really good stuff here. It will also like simulate your resist penalty. When you are making a character, you also want to make sure that you'll see. I actually forget this in my guides a lot, but remember that you do get flat life per level. So if it's level 1, you would only have 2,451 life. If I'm level 90, I'll have 5,400. That's for the flat life per level. And then generally when you are planning a build, try to plan for being like level 90 or 95, because let's face it, most people aren't going to have 123 points. Enemy level and enemy hit damage as well can be really important for calculating things, which we're going to look at now, calculations. But armor is a good example of this. So let's see, where's my armor? So actually, this is a great example. Let's go to calculations and we'll start teaching calcs. So if I right now, in enemy hit damage, right, the enemy hit is 10 damage. And then I look at, where's armor? Here. Let's see. So now you can see that the fist damage reduction is 90%, right? Amazing. Armor so good. Look how strong armor is. Right? And what does it say with nothing here? Then it says 21%. But let's say that I do 10,000 damage. I'm about to take a big slam. Then I only have fist damage reduction of 3%. So you can actually use this to get a very good idea of how your character is versus slams. Whereas, you know, most monsters in maps might be hitting for somewhere like around 1,000 or like 500. And then I have a 24% reduction. So that gives you some indication there about like being able to very quickly calculate your resistances against armor. There's a lot of like useful stats here, especially for AoE skills. So I am going to, let's say that we do ball lightning instead. The damage isn't like particularly important, but ball lightning is a good example here for what I'm about to show. So here, now we're on ball lightning. And it'll show you, first it'll break down your damage. We'll have like the all types, but then maybe you have a skill that has, you have some physical damage, some lightning. It'll show how much is of which, and if you have like leftover conversion, etc. But a really useful stat in Path of Building is this tab, Radius 27, because sometimes taking AoE nodes might not even increase your radius. Here, we can show that taking this does something. But if I take, perfect. If I take this node, this skill point, even though it says 10% increased area of effect, it actually does nothing. So you can see here that it's 27. I take 10% increased AoE, and it doesn't increase at all. So how this works is basically that there are thresholds and breakpoints, and you can see that's calculated for you here. It says next breakpoint is 5% in AoE or 2% more AoE multiplier, which means that I would need, it's basically rounding, and I would need an additional 5% to hit that. So it does literally nothing right now. So sometimes on a build, maybe you're investing quite a lot into AoE for no increase. Let's see. And then a lot of the things there you don't care about. Like, it just looks very overwhelming. Mostly I will use this page to look at like some of my defenses and you see like the differences in resists and stuff. I very rarely put resists in my Path of Building guides. That's just because, you know, you just need to get resist capped. It doesn't matter if you have like your resistances from your rings, your amulets, your belt. You just need to get res capped. Let's see. Especially when you are planning, do remember to save your builds. It can it can suck to have done like loads of planning. You've like planned everything out, and you're excited about your build, but then either Path of Building crashes, your PC goes down, and all your hard work is not saved. So do save them, make folders. So like 3.13, that's like the folder I'm gonna be saving builds to from now on, because that's what we're gonna be making build guides for. And let's see. think that's like pretty much it. I'm trying to think what else we need to showcase and talk about. Sometimes as well, it will just give you an average hit. It won't always give you a total DPS. Volatile Dead being an example like that. Then you need to manually calculate it, which is a little bit annoying. Sometimes it will just give you the average hit and the cast rate, and then you might have to calculate like, well, let's do Volatile Dead, right? Let's see that I do have each Volatile Dead ball is an average hit of 54,000 damage. And then I have to think like, well, I'm using like Spell Cascade and stuff like that. And let's say that at least it's a pretty safe bet that I will get like seven balls per second. And then like maybe a cast rate of like, I'll get 2 off per second, right? Then I can think like, I might have around 760,000 DPS. So some things you do still have to manually calculate. Not everything, but some things. Compare weapons. Well, we've already done that. We've already done that by like showing the... If you hover over, you'll see that this is a damage upgrade with the green stats. Equipping this weapon in weapon 2, or sorry, in weapon 1 will give you 6,000 DPS, but you'll get 35 mana cost. I think we're gonna run to questions. Oh, actually, no, there's a few more things I can showcase. We can showcase Animate Guardian and Animate Weapon. Minions in general are a bit of a pain, but let's say that I am doing a Animate Guardian. And I want to have like the buffs for that, or I'm using it for skills. Basically, the way it works is here is what it'll use as gear. So I would have to make a new gear set. So let's call it AG. And then the AG, like I would put a belly. I would put a belly on the beast on it because that's like a fairly bad item, but it has percentage life. And maybe I'm doing Chains of Command and I want to do a Starforge. This would be the same for Animate Weapon, where it will use that group. So now it'll start gearing, and you can see the total life is going up here. So I can do, for example, Southbound is sometimes used on Animate Guardian. Obviously not if you wanted to kill things. You can see the life is going up and being calculated based on your gear. So that is very, very important. That is very, very good. We can cover effective HP as well, which is in calculations here. Let's see. This is going to be annoying to show without resists. So let me quickly... Do I have resist on any item? Okay. Hold on. One sec. Let's cheat. There, 2 stone ring. Actually. There, this is a really, really good ring, and we are now resist capped. We are now resist capped. And you can like hover over your resists now, and it will show you like your mitigations and stuff. Let's see. So let's do spell effective HP calculation. And either way, it will show you your effective life pool down here. Effective life in Path of Building and in Path of Exile in general. For a lot of new players, it might just be that you feel like, oh wow, look at that character. I'm watching a streamer and he has 7,000 life, right? You just see like the red bubble. The red bubble, there's 7,000 life. And you're very, very impressed because you feel like he's so tanky. But sometimes, technically in Path of Exile, a character that has 3,000 life could have a lot more effective life than a character that has 7,000. And this is to do with like different mitigations and stuff. So you'll like get more information about that down here. And it also depends on the maximum hit taken, because obviously things like armor will depend a lot on how high the hit is. Armor is a very complicated stat in Path of Exile, but yeah, effective HP is very, very important. So it means you generally have a balance between things like, you know, percentage reduction, you can have fortify, you can have conversion, and we do talk a lot about that in the layered defenses one. But effective HP is very, very important, and it'll show you more stats when hovering over it as well. So for example, it'll include things like your mind over matter, because there's different types of getting higher HP than just the raw HP. So generally, very often I'll have like 30k effective HP. Even if my HP is only like 5 or 7k, I'll have different layers of defense. We'll often be doing things like dodge, evasion, then percentage fist reduction, and any build you can get fortify on. Fortify is very, very big for getting high effective HP. And I had a character that had like 3,000 life, but I had 118,000 effective HP. And it was basically unkillable with fast up. It did die. It had fast down. I also died to a bug, sadly. That is no longer in the game. But basically it wasn't replenishing enduring charges as it should. But that happens. So make sure you remember it's not just always about your raw HP. If you have a character with 10,000 life, but your effective life is 11,000, that's obviously a lot worse than a character with 7,000 life, but effective life 50,000. I think we're going to move on to questions. I want to try to keep the episode short as well. Any questions about Path of Building? Any maximum hit threshold Bill want to achieve for different damage types? Do you mean when you're doing damage or taking damage? Taking or taking? I generally don't look that much at it. But generally you want to be resist capped. I think like a good rule of thumb for like the kind of numbers you want to be resist capped. You want to have at least 5 or 6 HP. Obviously a bit more if you're in hardcore. On softcore you can get away with less just with moving. Already covered Iraqi. But generally most slams can very easily kill you in the game. Just Calhera, did you go over how to make your own build using the system? If so, I will watch the VOD. No, not really. That's something we cover more in like how to make a build, which we did last semester. That's like a very, very complicated, longer thing. 15,000 fists and about 50,000 for each element is decent. Yeah, I'd say that's a pretty good rule of thumb. I'd say that's a pretty good rule of thumb. Is added shock effectiveness from the tree, weapon, etc. automatically counted in PoB? No, shock is a bit of a pain. And if you just... I think, is the default one always 50%? But shock is a bit of a pain. Let's see. What is it even doing? It's not always calculated accurately, and it's also not like calculating like how high your enemy is, and how much HP it has, because there are thresholds involved with that you need to do like high enough damage. Like if you are doing, let's say you're critting or you have a 100% chance to shock with ball lightning, you're gonna get smaller shocks because it's like very, very often and quick hits. Whereas like something like Storm Cold that has like one big hit would do like bigger shocks. So actually knowing your shock And shock damage is very hard. Skitter bots obviously is like 17.9 at level 20. So I just do it normally, like slap in an 18 or 17 shock there to calculate skitter bots. And it is very, very hard to calculate properly. If you have a skill which can shock, you can hover over calcs to see shock values for Cyrus. Yeah. Can you check what stats are the best for your particular skill? Yeah, well, whenever you like hover over items, it will give you an indication of, like, for example, if I hover over this now, it'll give me that it's giving 6,000 more total DPS. How does rounding work? Rounding, it's mostly down. Mostly down. I can't think of many instances where it rounds up. How do you incorporate timeless dual passives in Path of Building? Can I now roll based on the seed value? Let's take a look at it, because that's been changing a little bit, and I can't remember how updated the fork is. Let's say we have a number there of Awana. What does it actually do in Path of Building now? So I want to put it here. Yeah. So these are not like actually updated, and I don't know if Immortal Ambition, I don't think it really like doesn't work well. It's all manual. All of it is manual. So it's a bit of a pain. But at least it shows that you're not getting the normal ones. How do you know when Path of Building recommends support gems which are not actually good, like Blood Magic, for example? Sure. That is more of a knowledge-based thing, because let's look at, like, boom. Elemental Focus, for example, will very often, or sometimes Conk Effect, are two examples of things that Path of Building will recommend that might not always be the best thing. And the reason for that is Elemental Focus. Well, now I can no longer shock. So if I'm relying on my Ball Lightning to shock, then that is a bad thing. If I want it to freeze, then that is a bad thing. It will also, in a lot of builds, put Decay very high up. And also, some builds will have AoE overlap, right? So sometimes your build will rely a lot on Blade Blast, for example, right? On Blade Blast or Toxic Rain, it will rely a lot on overlap for damage. Let's flashbang the audience here and bring out Paint. But let's say that... let me get a bigger brush. Can I get a thicker brush? I want it to be thicker. Let's say that these are all the blades that are lying on the ground, right? These are all the blades, and they're like fairly evenly spread out. We're using Spell Cascade. And then we're going to have red for our ink AoE one, which is going to show in Path of Building is a lot less damage. And we're going to try to have them all like fairly even size. It doesn't actually let me copy paste them, which is annoying. I wish I could copy paste them so we could have them same size. But you'll see that they're like all fairly even size, right? And you see a large amount of AoE overlap. So if the enemy boss, that's a annoying one. Let's say that this green here is the enemy boss, and that's getting hit by a lot of them. Now, Conk Effect will show us a lot more damage, but will substantially reduce my AoE. That, like, sure, the ones that are hitting is good, but you can see that a lot of them are maybe not hitting the boss. So this is a good example where Path of Building can mislead you, because it'll show that the blue here, Conk, will give you so much more Path of Building damage, and Ink AoE so much less. But you can see that with Conk Effect here, only 2 of them are actually hitting the boss, whereas with red, the lower damage value is going to do way more damage. So both Elemental Focus and Conk Effect are 2 examples here of where Path of Building will lead you astray. Hopefully the build you're following will give you some information about that. Hopefully next semester, but not this semester for Azono. He asked, will there be an episode for more advanced players on build creation, etc.? We did do how to make a build last semester. How does that work? With more projectiles and more blades being thrown, will the spread be bigger? And that depends a lot on the skill. That depends a lot on the skill. Generally, for like things like toxic rain and stuff, more arrows is better because there will be more overlap. How should I look at damage for a minion build? I mean, let's say I'm using Raging Spirit and PoB. Minion damage is 300,000. Does that mean my whole damage, or how should I look at it? Generally, this is calculated per minion. And let's stop flashbanging the audience and, for example, look at Spectres. But yeah, generally, it is per minions. You would need to multiply it by how many you have. And then if I go and raise Spectre here, it'll like let me manage. So I want to do... I want to do Syndicate Operatives, and not everything will be added here, but this is the operative I'll be using. It will also not be calculating things like shotgunning multiple projectiles for you, so often with Spectres, the damage value will be massively off. Massively off. But it will like scale it for you here. You mentioned Path of Building suggesting Decay as something bad. What would be the drawback for using Decay? Well, Decay is very, very rarely used. Generally, don't use it. The way it works is just it adds a damage or a time stat, but it doesn't. It's not something that stacks, right? Most builds that you're going to be doing aren't like Essence Drain, where on Essence Drain, it doesn't. I don't gain more damage for throwing 7 Essence Drain into the target. And Decay as well is only, it adds 1 stack of Decay, and it doesn't like, if I hit like 100 times per second, the Decay isn't doing more damage. So it doesn't like calculate properly. So just ignore Decay. It's like very, very specific builds that will talk about it when you're doing Decay. Very few builds use it recently. We'll do a few more questions, and then we have the announcement coming up soon. I want to have a break for that. Got a big Path of Exile announcement in 30 minutes. Decay is for damage over time builds that are also scaling, like damage over time multiplier, degen, etc. Curses are covered already, and effective HP. How to calculate detonate dead? That depends so much on the life of the monsters you're doing and stuff. I think we are going to wrap it up there with questions. I'm going to take a short break and stuff. If you are enjoying these like Path of Exile University lessons, a good way to support them is you can buy a PoE t-shirt. They're pretty cool. But we'll never paywall them. So hope you're enjoying the lessons. And there's one more. We have Racing with Havoc tomorrow to get a different perspective on things. And then we will be doing these semesters before every league start and keeping them up to date and adding more as we can. So I hope these are helping. And thanks for all the support. Sub if you like the videos. And we have loads of content coming out for 3.13, including loads of build starters that me and the team will be working on. So hope you are having a good time, and I hope you had the best league start ever. Many tabulas for you. Thanks for watching, and try to die less than I do.